It's another Manly Monday, and this Manly Monday we are talking about what I promised you to talk about last week, protecting teen boys the way we protect teen girls. And this is going to be kind of data driven because we know that there have been notable shifts in the data we see regarding men and boys. We know that even though women overall still report higher rates of loneliness, the rate of change, the rate of increase among men is something is causing a lot of alarm. But there's more to it than that. I dug into the papers, so we're gonna get into this. So turn off my desktop audio so you don't hear all the notifications. Sorry about that. But we're going to get into this. Hope you find it useful. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/Leanna K. Or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it. Coffee.com/Leanna K. Yeah, I've been looking at computer hardware lately. Oh my God, I cannot afford the stuff that's out there right now. Anyway, so we talk a lot about the loneliness epidemic, and that's good. How we talk about it is extremely important, though. And the challenge with this stuff is that there's other indicators that are cause for concern. Notably, we talk a lot about, the tatifying of young men, but we don't talk as much about the rate of increase of eating disorders and self-objectification that we see in teenagers and young men. And they are tying this now. It's interesting because traditionally, when we talked about the impact of sexualized media on teenagers and young men, we focused on their attitudes towards women, and there is a detrimental effect there. Yes, according to the studies that have been done, but there is also an impact on self-identification and what's called internalization of appearance ideals and body surveillance. They have found that when adolescent boys consume more online porn, they start getting the idea that in order to be desirable, they have to meet these not only these usually unattainable appearance ideals, or it's dangerous to meet these things because it involves things like steroids and human growth hormone. But also they start self-objectifying, which means that adolescent boys are believing that their primary value is in how much sex they have and how sexually appealing they are. All the things we've looked at in girls. And I find this interesting because when was the date of this paper? Maybe it's older. I should have checked this. Sometimes things like, when was this paper published are hard to find. 2013. Okay, so it's held up. So this was happening for a while and it sort of snuck in. And it's interesting to me also. I'll put the link to these articles in the article in the description box, because I do think it's important to look at this stuff. Now, they're not huge studies, but they're not 12 people, so pretty decent. It's interesting because the same name appears on both of them. Two of the names are the same, so there's obviously a group of researchers who are realize that we need this information about adolescent boys. And it's interesting to me because we don't think about porn and traditional values, right? But one of the studies showed that the more porn adolescent boys consume, the more they have really dated ideas about women and dating women. So it's not predictive, it's said, but there is sort of the gender stereotypical beliefs, both about men and about women, got worse with porn. And I've always found this curious because and obviously, the reason I looked at the date, because more and more we're seeing more. It used to be that I called HBO Hey Boobs Out. More and more it's Hey Butts Out. There is naked man ass almost guaranteed in the first episode of a premium cable series. And I don't know why they thought that if we start, if we sexually objectify women less and we sexually objectify men more, I don't know why they thought men are this unique species, so we wouldn't get the exact same damaging effects on adolescent boys. But there's more, okay? Because I started getting really, really concerned about this with the John Kent Superman run. Because that run was seen as this big thing about LGBTQ, oh yay, he's bisexual, all that stuff. What concerned me about that run of comics is, unlike the Tim Drake Bi-Curious story, which I actually thought was a better story because it was based more on emotions and about how he felt about it, and this very cautious, very sort of awkward relationship trying to figure out what the hell is going on with this, what the hell's going on with me. The John Kent Superman story hinged on a story about a 17-year-old boy and who he has sex with. And there were these big splash pages of him and his boyfriend sucking face in a way that was very clearly for, because it's like, those stupid ones where they're like this, like they kiss like this, because, that's the most comfortable way to have a passionate kiss, right? Both of you trying to dislocate your necks. It was so stupid. It was clearly for the voyeuristic pleasure of the viewer, not two people who care about each other. It wasn't about love. It was about two teenagers making out. And this has been an issue for me in comics for a while. It's been an issue for me with LGBTQ representation for a while, that it's seen as it's fine to sexually objectify same-sex couples, and it's not. Okay? Same-sex couples are no less loving relationships than heterosexual couples. But there's also this extra thing of gay men in general. It's just bare-ass naked, literally bare-ass naked. And it's like all the rules of objectification go out the window because it's men. And the argument is that, well, because men have more power in society, then it's okay. And that's not based on data. That's not what we're seeing. And it's harming everybody. Because it doesn't help anybody if, young adult women and adolescent girls think that every boy they meet wants to rape them deep down. And it doesn't help boys who a 17-year-old boy is not physically capable of looking like Chris Hemsworth's Thor. They just don't have the muscle bulk. They need another 5 years minimum, maybe more, to get that big. And if the message is being sent to them, and let's face it, there is assistance for those movie looks too, which I don't like. I don't like it all. I much prefer the muscle suit in Superman and Lois. Like, let's not, pressure/force men into loading their bodies up with shit that is going to harm them long term to look a certain way. Like, come on. With CGI now, we don't need to do this. CGI fixes everything. Like, get the best person for the part, do a reasonable amount of workout, and let CGI do the rest if you want the ridiculous, that in, Love and Thunder, that was totally digital. It's just, but the point is that unattainable physical standards are hurting boys the same way it was hurting girls. And sexualization of teenagers is not okay, no matter who it's done to, no matter who it's done by. Okay? It's very strange to me that we're putting all this focus on, banning books about gay teens that are telling the realities of the experience. Well, go out and fuck, boys, is use women, be a pickup artist, is, 12-year-old boys are consuming Andrew Tate and fuck all's being done about it. And I call bullshit on that. Not only is it proof that these anti-trans, anti-LGBTQ initiatives are not about protecting teenagers and protecting kids. It's also underlying that it's exacerbating that messaging sent to adolescent boys and young men that the world cares about everybody except you. Everybody else deserves protection. Everybody else deserves support. You're just supposed to meet these impossible odds again and again and again. And if you don't, there's something wrong with you. And, I feel this really acutely because I had the opposite problem. As a teenager, I was in, competitive dance and acrobatics when I was in high school, and I was very muscular. I was a cheerleading base as much as anything else. And the whole muscular female physique was not the ideal back then. Kate Moss was the ideal back then. So I was fat and mannish. Even though I wasn't fat, I was bulkier. I mean, my thighs, I couldn't find jeans that fit. My thighs were so I could lift guys who were, one guy, he was 180 pounds and I could throw him over my shoulder. I was strong back then, pre-autoimmune disease. But that was considered ugly and not ideal. And so I started eating less and less and less. And I could not get skinny enough to meet the ideals of the time. And I don't see that any differently as these guys that can't physically bulk up. And that's why I think it's important to push, the Spider-Man physique, because Spider-Man's supposed to look younger, and Tom Holland was older than a teenager in those early movies, but that dude is fit, right? I think we should go, no, that's healthy, that's appealing and attractive too, but what gets centered is all the women who thirst over Thor. And we keep getting into these norms, and you can't expect a teenage boy, and they are boys, right? We cannot expect teenage boys to make mature adult choices. Their brains are not only a soup of hormones, girls are too, but this is about protecting boys. Their brains are soups of hormones. They're just starting to figure out who they are, never mind what they want out of life. And there's this pressure not only to, deal with the hormones, but also there's this status to sexual activity that's, between the number of characters who, like Iron Man and Star-Lord, who are these womanizing jerks at the beginning. And okay, it's seen as juvenile, it's seen as not good, but it's still within that heroic spectrum, right? That, this is what guys are supposed to be. And if you're not that, you're less manly, which is why I thought, depictions like Captain America are good, because he wasn't that. He was the opposite. And to me, that's traditional masculinity. Traditional masculinity is, it's about your character, and it's about you being a good person, and sleeping with everything that moves is not that type of traditional masculinity. And I do think that there's got to sort of be both. There's got to be a wider, I turned my desktop audio on instead of off. Sorry about that. There's got to be a wider spectrum of ideals, which is interesting, because the problem used to be that there were all these male archetypes that were acceptable, and far fewer types of female archetypes that people could see themselves in. And it just seems that we've gotten rid of more male archetypes. We've narrowed that and haven't widened the feminine pantheon, because let's face it, what have we added? Male superhero archetype, girl edition. Ripley from Aliens, again. It's not helping, right? And we see the impacts on boys. We don't need to see papers to see that something very profound is going on when young men are talking about a woman's body count, meaning the sex partners that she's had, and the Andrew Tate stuff, and the going on about fertility and all this stuff. And let's face it, there's a huge amount of male hierarchy going on with the manosphere. A lot of these guys, like Andrew Tate, like even, the Jordan Peterson types, who, if your young man has, if your teenage son has got to get into something, if I had to pick between Andrew Tate and Jordan Peterson, oh God, at least there's some redeeming things about Jordan Peterson, right? But pre-brain damage, obviously. But there's this idea, Tate has this thing, you're a loser, I'm cool, you have to listen to me because you're not good enough the way you are. It's not even aspirational anymore. It's, you suck, I don't get good. And masculine hierarchy is something we don't talk about enough, because it can be healthy. Male role models are really, really important. Having someone in the community that young men will listen to override these media messages, that's important. But when the male hierarchy is used to abuse and demean young men, and they don't realize they're being abused and demeaned because they think it's a toughness paradigm. They think that's there to help them, and it's not. Of course, they're going to internalize objectification and get this idea that no woman will ever want them unless they are this particular physical ideal. And it's interesting because there's this story out about this man in Canada who defrauded multiple women out of tens of thousands of dollars each. And he's not the ideal. He looks a bit like, when I saw him, I don't know if you guys remember the wrestler Big Van Vader. He looks kind of like that. And when you read these women who were taken advantage of, they said he was charming. And that was the thing that was disarming. Not the way he looked, not, the 3% body fat. He was charming. And I do think that we do need to, one, really stress that with young men. That, okay, what kind of woman do you want? Do you want someone shallow and appearance oriented who, the minute you slip will trade you in for a better model? No. Well, don't mold yourself to attract that kind of person, right? And no, not all women are like that. The vast majority aren't. And that's when, no, women. No. I don't understand why people think that some guy is an expert on women. The same way I was very hesitant to do men's content because never lived as a man. That guy you're taking all your damn advice from doesn't understand the internal experiences of women. Don't listen to that guy. He's not, the internet gurus, they're not there to help you be happy. They're there to get money out of you. So that's one. But two, we really need to stop sexualizing 16 and 17-year-old boys. We need to stop with the John Kent Superman. We need to stop with the Riverdale. We need to start telling stories of boys that are emotional and relationship focused. Because when somebody's that age, figuring out who you are and what you want is the critical thing. You need that before you can go on to have a successful, functional, fulfilling relationship with other adults. And okay, yeah, fooling around with a couple of girls at a party, nothing wrong with that, right? That's adolescent development. Nothing wrong with that. But this idea that anal is being normalized, that's an advanced move. It's everything we said was bad for teenage girls, we've dumped on teenage boys. And it's not right. It's not right. And that doesn't mean that comics should not tell relationship stories with teenagers. Just the focus is on the relationship and the emotion. 17-year-old boys shouldn't be depicted in sexualized situations for the pleasure of the reader or the viewer or anything like that. And it is possible to tell a very compelling story without the sexual objectification. It makes no sense that we knew it was bad for girls, so we did it to boys. The humans are humans. The science doesn't change. All this crap about, oh no, they have privilege. Well, part of the privilege was that they weren't sent sexually objectifying messages where your primary worth is how much somebody wants to, use you for sex and not care about you. Part of the privilege was an expectation of loyalty and not cheating on you, and that's gone. We know that women are just as capable of cheating as men. And we saw those numbers move when women, started working longer hours. It became more common for women to have jobs that, you're reliant on for income. They spent really long hours. They got lonely. They cheated, right? People are people. And this idea that men are, and boys are a completely different thing because privilege, well, that's bullshit. Similarly, this idea that adolescent boys are a completely different species because testosterone. I would love to go back to the days where, the 80s movies where boys were, oh, girl, they saw a boob once and it was all, it was that combination of curiosity and kind of terror. Like, can we please have age appropriate content for young teenagers again? I mean, Skeleton Crew was great for that. It's a big deal. The fact that they're, Neil, the little blue guy from Skeleton Crew, the fact that he was deemed the Riz Master by the internet because a couple of girls kissed him on the cheek. Like, can we please have more of that, right? Because that is acceptance. That is approval. That is not pressuring boys to have sex by the time they're 15. That's just, it's not right. And I do think that adolescent boys are caught right now between the unhealthier pressures of traditional masculinity. I'm not saying traditional masculinity is bad. The traditional masculinity of like Superman or Captain America, that's great. That's super positive, right? Use the strengths you have to better the world. Be content with enough. Have healthy humility, which means it's okay to make a mistake. And that, Clark Kent and Steve Rogers are just as valid as Superman and Captain America. Those are all really healthy masculine messages, right? You'll notice that neither of those guys is a womanizer. But, the stuff about you've got to chase women and you have to, cajole them and you have to talk them into losing their virginity. And, this idea of masculine courtship being coercive, that's getting our boys into trouble. But also this idea that, you have to look like the guys in the magazines to attract women. It's complicated because there's a combination of those lingering trophy girlfriend, trophy bride things that the male hierarchy kicks in and men communicate status to other men by what, their wives and girlfriends look like. That's not healthy. The important point of competition should be your character. Which is why I think that Lois Lane looking a particular way is really important. You don't make Lois Lane a redhead because, let's face it, we're rare, we're fetishized. And as much as I don't like that, Lois Lane has to be a brunette. She has to just be attractive, but not stand outy, because that says a lot about Clark. And the same of look, teaching young boys, adolescent boys, if your goal is to get that, a woman who looks like, I don't know, pick Everybody just seems to be mid these days. Nobody's good enough, but you know what I mean? Whatever. Pick some super hot woman, right? If your ideal is a human anime character, well, yeah, you're probably gonna have to earn a lot of money because that shit's expensive. That is not me saying men should primarily be earners, by the way. That's just a reality of what it takes to look like a human anime character. You know, that practically every body part of Kim's Kardashians is paid for. That's surgery. That's injectables. That's not genetics. You see the evolution of her look over time. That she wasn't born that way, right? If you want that, go ahead. I really don't think that's a path to happiness. If you want a woman of substance who will treat you well, that's not the goal. And that doesn't mean you settle. Anybody who's legitimately attractive to women knows that after a certain threshold, I mean, Kim Kardashian doesn't register as human to me anymore. And the women that the internet goes, oh, she's just mid, she's not hot anymore, it actually registers as a body. And it's kind of like, what the hell are y'all talking about? That is a good looking woman, right? Accepting the specifics of what you find attractive as an individual is a part of individuation. Because we're all going to have things that are not considered the ideal that work for us, right? When we were watching Interview with the Vampire with Eileen, afterwards I said, okay, this is serious question. I am not being glib. Is Lestat in this show supposed to be attractive because he looks like 2-week-old cigarette smoke? And, you know, it was kind of funny. Like, I see how the guy who plays Louis, who is also Grey Worm on Game of Thrones, like, I understand why that's an attractive man. But Lestat, it looks a bit like Great Value Bill from True Blood to me. And I don't get it. And that doesn't mean he's not an attractive man. That just is explain it to me. And it can be the same thing. You know, you can recognize that someone is a traditionally beautiful person, but you don't understand why that person is necessarily supposed to be better than somebody else. And just because somebody isn't your physical ideal doesn't mean there are people that get better looking the more you get to know them. Trust me, because you associate the way they look with the way they make you feel. And every single dating coach says that at the end of the day is it. Ayn Rand had a revolving door of men around her. No kidding. Like, Ayn Rand was swimming in dick. So, if you don't know who Ayn Rand is, look her up. She looks a bit like Edna Mode from The Incredibles. So, you know, everybody likes something different, and all of that is valid. That is what we should be teaching our young men. Not to do this ongoing male hierarchy competition using women as props or other boys as props, right? Because that's what's happening right now. And the problem is this ties into the loneliness epidemic, because when you are constantly competing for status, you don't get companionship. If your primary concern about a partner is whether he or she makes you, or they make you look good to other men, and I shouldn't leave they, because let's face it, non-binary people are nobody's status object in this continuum. So, you know, it's the much younger guy for an older gay man. That's status. Probably one or both people are going to end up hurt there, but it's status. I don't know why. But, you know, the trophy girlfriend, the trophy bride as well. You are never going to feel companionship and support if that is your priority. You are not. You are constantly going to feel alone no matter how much cheap sex you have. Actually, very expensive sex, but it's not fulfilling because there's no emotional connection. There's no trust. There's no sense of being accepted because you got a partner from central casting and they got a partner that they use as a bank. And you are not going to find fulfillment that way. That is what we should be teaching our adolescent boys and young men. That is how to protect them, to get them teach them the healthy bits of male competitiveness and male hierarchy. Like, find your Master Yoda. Yeah, for sure, man. Cool. Find your Master Sifu. Which is why I think a lot of young men gravitate towards Eastern media because of those, male role models. But figure out who you are and what you want and decouple that from the competition. Compete based on skill, great. Compete based on character, great. But don't select your partners based on, are your buddy's gonna be impressed that you're fucking her, right? That is a recipe for loneliness. It is. And for God's sakes, we need to stop using 17-year-old boys in stories that primarily focus on their sex lives. I shouldn't have to say that. But like I said, John Kent Superman, Riverdale, this shit's not okay. It's not okay. We have scientific evidence that it's harming our boys as well as our girls. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK, or buy a one-time Leanna Care session for someone who can use it but can't afford it, coffee.com/LeannaK. Thanks for watching Manly Mondays.